Good afternoon. My name is Ala McCoy. I am Director of Startup Support at the University of Maryland's Ventures. And I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who joined us today for the next installment in Startup Fundamentals Workshop Series, both live webinar audience and those watching a recorded version on our Startup UMD YouTube channel. This workshop series is offered by Ventures with collaboration from MTech at the Clark School of Engineering and Ningman Center for Entrepreneurship at the Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. Everyone attending the live session, please feel free to submit questions using the Q&A function. You can usually find it at the bottom of your screen. This session is recorded and it will be posted to our Startup UMD YouTube channel, so you may submit your questions anonymously if you would like to. Today, our speakers will discuss what it takes to launch a food-based business. So welcome, Eric McCoy and Kimbily Boyd. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today and sharing your expertise. Eric McCoy is a chef, food entrepreneur, and currently a full-time faculty at the Center of Hospitality and Culinary Arts at the Howard Community College. And his colleague, Kim Boyd, also known as Chef KB. She's owner and operator of the Yummy Spot. It's a small catering, meal prep, and private chef service. And she also is a culinary arts instructor at the Howard Community College. So thank you so much, Eric and Kim, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and your experiences with us. The floor is yours. I'll be here in the background monitoring the Q&A. So please keep submitting those questions. So we have lots of questions to ask our presenters. The mic is all yours. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for joining us, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so one of the things we're just going to run through this is kind of being an instructor, you have to bear with me. So the question becomes is, if you're launching your food business, what is it you need to know? Some of this comes from things that I've run into that I was like, oh, I didn't think about that, and you're scrambling last minute and you're losing time. The first thing you have to ask yourself is what certifications you need. The first one, of course, is ServSafe. You need the restaurant manager certificate. Both of these slides have hyperlinks to the locations where you can get more information on the certification. You need to have in Maryland and DC, almost all of the areas I know, ServSafe is taken by nationwide since it's a national restaurant association. So it's the one certification that will cover you in every locale that you move to, as far as I know. You have to have somebody that has a certification for sanitation and safety on duty at all times in your operation while it is either producing food or in operations. If you're serving alcohol, I've put the Maryland tips. You can pick any state if you were to move to Virginia or something else. But tips certification, there is a national restaurant certification through the ServSafe as well for alcohol. Some places require it, not everybody. When you're registering your business, the question always becomes, what do I need? You have the LLC, which is a limited liability corporation. You have an S Corp, C Corp. For the most part, unless you have very good reasons that have been explained to you by lawyers and accountants, you're most likely going to go with the LLC if you're going into a corporation. There is sole proprietor or partnership where you're running it through as a person. The issue that you have there is your liability. If you were to open a catering operation, you have everything going, somebody gets sick, you're a sole proprietor, they can sue you and take your personal assets. If you've followed all the rules and you have an LLC, they can only take the assets of the LLC. They can't take your house. So if you have a house, if you have assets, having an LLC is something that you need to take into consideration, just to have that firewall that protects you from legal. If there is a mistake, if somebody slips and falls in the restaurant, that you'll have insurance, but there's always an aspect to it. If you have an LLC, a C Corp, all of those, there's new reporting that are being required by the federal government. I know that I've talked to Ala. She's going to reach out to some experts. I don't want to get into that too much. Just realize there is new reporting requirements through the Treasury Department. before you're opening your business, I'm sure, Kim, you're running into some of this with business license. So
Yeah, sure. I would say the most important tip I can give you is before you invest too much, personally for me, food trailer, food truck, get the inspector out there. You'll put 10, 20,000 into something and find out you need 10 or 20 more thousand because you don't have the right equipment. So make sure you get with the inspector in your county before you invest the money. But yes, licensing is different for every county in Maryland. Some counties are easier than others, but just always contact your health department and they will steer you in the right direction.
and as you go into, so for any of these, you're gonna have to have a business license if you're selling. That's gonna have you collect sales tax, and then you have to put the reporting in on that. Again, these are things that most of the sales operations, and they'll give you a certain level of training on how to do this if you contact the business development areas of each county or actually the state. Permitting, for example, you need your health permit. You have to be inspected by the health inspector. Alcohol, if you're doing alcohol, you have to have the licensing, depending on where you're going. If you're going to go and you're going to do any construction, you're changing anything, you're going to have building permits. If you're in DC, you're going to have to go through DCRA for construction. You're going to need, so there's a lot of hurdles that you're going to run into. Alcohol licensing, the next one, if you're going to employ anybody, you need to have an EIN number. That basically is federal for federal and all the joys of that. Oh, okay, cool. I'm sorry. I was open to chat. So your EIN number at that point that you need to file with the county, and you're going to need a state number for your employees as well. So depending on, I had a restaurant in DC, so I had to have a state tax number for Maryland, Virginia, and DC. So you have to apply for those. In fact, one of the easier is you can get some help when you hire a payroll processing company, particularly when you start. I sort of went with a more expensive one because they had more services at the beginning, then I transferred over to a less expensive one later on in the process. You're in any web services. How are people finding you? The other one, payment processing. Are you taking credit cards? If you do, there's new regulations with, they're not really that new. They came in 2015 on processing. You have to have PCI compliance. So it can cost you thousands of dollars if you're not in compliance, and you're charged and you're out the money. Your bank and, operating in your merchant account. So there's a lot of little areas that you're going to need to consider before opening your business. Again, this is if you're a corporation, you're definitely going to have that business account. And then you move down. So moving along, one of the most important things I cannot stress enough is before you start this, your partnership agreement. I know that Ventures has some great ones on equity distribution. Go look at that. I know you're like, well, I'm opening a restaurant. What do I need to worry about equity distribution? What does that even mean? So the question it comes down to is who owns what? Who's putting in what? If, let's say, the three of us that are on this seminar come in, I'm the chef, I'm going to do all the labor, Kim's going to be an investor, Allah's going to do the back of the house. How many hours is everybody supposed to do? How much ownership does each person get? How much money is being put in? These are important questions. It's, for lack of a better term, saying that when you get in with a partnership, you're getting married, but you're going to have an end at some point. There's going to be a divorce. You want to have that divorce settlement written up at the beginning before you even start, because it's almost, for lack of a better term, prenup. It's going to give you who does what. Asset allocation. Am I bringing a bunch of equipment into this partnership? Maybe I have a bunch of restaurant equipment that I had in the past. Maybe I don't. We have to buy it. Who's going to own what percentage of the company? As you bring in a partner, have these conversations at the beginning when you're hopeful and you really want to make this work, not when everything is starting to go and there's a lot of money. That's when it can become very acrimonious. People are going to be angry and arguing about, well, I did this, you did this, I should get. Have it written down so that you have something that you can in writing. Who can make what decisions? Is there a specific amount of money that the operating partner can say, I can make a decision to fix something up to $5,000 if I'm operating the business? Maybe it's $1,000. What is the amount of money that I'm allowed to spend at any one particular event? What happens when a partner leaves? Say I'm a bit older, I leave, the rest of the company wants to go on. How do I exit? Am I paid? Do I have to keep working? What if the business fails? Nobody goes, oh, I'm going to start a business so I can fail. We know restaurants have one of the highest failure rates in the world of all the businesses. Be very careful, have that spelled out about who's paying what. One of the most dangerous things, and we'll talk about this when we get a little closer into specifically like a restaurant, and also your purveyors, of personal guarantees. When you personally guarantee the rent for 10 years, they can pierce the corporate veil, sell your house, and make you pay rent for 10 years, even though you only operate it for one. So these are things you have to be very careful with. And you want to have these, who's going to do what and who's expected to do each job. Am I expected to work 5 days a week? Am I expected to work 6 days a week? And what happens if I only work 3 days a week? Let's have those spelled out at the very beginning. Let's not have the argument later. I can't stress how important this is. Everybody thinks it's going to be great. We're going to have a great time. This is wonderful. Have a partnership agreement. Write it down. Some online tools that Allah's provided. I'm not going to go in too deep. We actually use 99 Designs for our logo at the restaurant I opened. There's a lot of really effective, inexpensive ways to start certain aspects of the business. The reality, though, is you're still going to have to hire some experts. Once you get going, you're going to have to file with the IRS. You're going to have to file with other things. So the question becomes is, how much money can you spend? You may be able to do your bookkeeping with QuickBooks and turn that over to the accountant who's able to do your end of year filing for your taxes. You still want to have an accountant that goes through these things. Real estate agent. Having a space, having a restaurant. I can't stress the location. You want to have a corporate real estate, if that's what you're looking for, and you want to have a corporate real estate attorney. There's so many terms in there that you don't understand. I don't understand. What is CAM? What is a personal guarantee? CAM is common area maintenance. You see that it says $12. Well, I'm renting the space for $52 a square foot, and now it says $12 CAM. The reality is that I'm paying $12 a square foot for common area maintenance. What does that mean? Well, the maids that clean the halls. If you're in a strip mall, snow removal, the people planting the flowers that are in the little beds along the parking lot. They're sweeping up the sidewalks and making sure that the area looks nice. That's a common area maintenance. So that means that I'm not really paying $52 a square foot. I'm paying $66 a square foot. And if you don't know what that means, you sign the lease. And if you have 100 square foot, it's going to make a big difference. For every 100 square feet, you're going to need 1,000 square foot. It's going to make a big difference in how much money you actually own. So you need to consider that. So it's like $12,000, take that, think about it. Next one is corporate. As you go into certain aspects of you get investment or you're looking at more complicated, not boilerplate contracts, having a lawyer to look through contract law and corporate law to make sure that everything's the way it's supposed to, particularly if you're looking at a franchise, consider getting a franchise lawyer so that they can explain every aspect of the business you're looking into. So they're expensive. Budget for them, have them ready so that you can have their expertise and so they can explain things and warn you about pitfalls that can pop up. It's something that, I don't want to see in the future anybody to fail and then they find out it costs even more than they thought it was. The next group that you're going to have to deal with is your purveyors, vendors and suppliers. This could be your food. Where are you getting from? There's a whole argument. You can go wholesale, Restaurant Depot. There's a store that Cisco operates called the Cisco store. Kim, what are some of the places you're picking up stuff for your catering?
I use mostly the restaurant store. I do use Cisco store. I'm not big enough where I have, delivery. So I do go to these stores that are more convenient to pick up bulk items.
Okay, yeah, and that's generally how most places start. Costco. Once you start getting in brick and mortar, I have seen issues where people will, well, I save 50 cents a gallon on milk by having it picked up at Costco versus getting it delivered by Cisco or whatever, I
Yeah.
give you a dozen. The issue I always ask is, okay, so how many hours are you driving to the store? How many hours are you picking this up? How much money are you really saving?
Yes.
And usually it's not I know one guy that was a diner, and I was talking to him. I was like, what did you save? And he's like, I saved about $50 every trip I went. I said, well, how long did it take you? He's like, to drive there, buy everything, pack it up, get back to my operation. It was like 4 or 5 hours. Said, so you're paying yourself $10 an hour. You're below minimum wage. You're saving $50, but you're spending 5 hours. What could you do with 5 hours more that could make your business more effective? Marketing. You're behind the line. I mean, if you're away saving $50, if you're open, you're paying a cook $15. You could be sleeping. You have to take care of yourself to be able to operate this. Is it really saving $50 worth the money? So when you get your size big enough and you're doing you can have delivery. So you have a centralized kitchen that you can have delivery. Start considering yeah, it's a little more expensive, but at the same time, I'm saving how much time because it's coming in right when I need, or at, the day I need it. The other thing to consider too is that, there's terms as you get bigger, you can actually get credit through some of these companies.
Yes.
And so once you start getting credit terms, you can operate them. I know of one company, one of the things they do, they would purchase everything on a credit card. They would pay it off at the end of the month, so they weren't paying credit card percentage terms. But what they did is they saved all the points and the cash back, and they were able, because it was a fairly large restaurant, they were buying about $60,000 worth of product a month. They were able to take the cash back and use it to buy new pieces of equipment or repair equipment. So the cash back might be, your cash flow is incredibly important. So there's different ways of doing that. Alcohol. Alcohol can, not to get into morality or anything about that, alcohol is a revenue source. Even I had a small pizza, fast casual pizza that primarily did lunch. I still did about 10% in alcohol. Something about somebody having a beer with pizza, they liked it. Having that revenue source. The other thing is, compared to everything else, alcohol generally has one of the largest profit margins on it. So even bottled beer, I was at a 20% food cost, meaning for every dollar I spent, only 20 cents of it went to the cost of the item. And so when you start looking at alcohol, it becomes a very profitable item that you have. Wine, same thing. Your highest profit is based off of keg beer. Your lowest profit is probably high-end wines, but you can actually make it, and we'll talk about cost controls in a few minutes, but you make a large margin. So if I sell $1,000 bottle of wine, I may not make 50%. I may make only 50% on the cost, but that's still $500. Next thing, packaging. Are you getting big enough that you can print your logo on stuff? Are you going to have your logo on cups? So you're going to need a company that can do the printing design. If not, you can buy them through places like Cisco or just a packaging company. Webstront store. There's a bunch of different online stores that you can go and buy your packaging for your whatever. Where are you buying a lot of your packaging, Kim?
It's typically the same places. I actually am a little savvy about that marketplace. You can find some packaging. People are getting rid of things. People, going out of style. So I have to be a little savvy being a small business, but if not, restaurant store usually saves me. But I'm a little savvy with a couple of sites, just finding people going out of business, restaurants, they're getting rid of, boxes of things. So I try and save money where I can.
No, you absolutely have to. It's
Yeah.
a very, very smart way to go. Linens, if you're doing, if your your home machine is going to die if you try to do the number of linens that go through, and I don't even think it could keep up with it. If you're just doing side towels, over here at the school, we have a commercial laundry machine and a dryer. That thing is generally running about 2/3 of the day just to keep up with side towels that we're operating just for minor cleanup. If you add in linens, tablecloths, and that sort of thing on a full restaurant, it's going to take a lot. So there are linen companies. I will say you have to be very careful with the linen companies. They have, um read Andre Saltner's book, Lutece. He has some pointed words on it. I don't want to get in trouble with any of the linen companies. They can be expensive. If you do decide that you're going to buy your own, that think about the labor you're going to lose on that as well. So that's a decision you're really going to have to make on how you're going to take care of cloth napkins, linen, tablecloths, that sort of thing, particularly if you're going to have white fine dining. Employee uniforms. Are you going to offer employee uniforms? One of the things we did is we actually had logo printed on the uniform. So we had to find a company that could do the silk screening and do the hats, the embroidery. You don't want them to look, you don't want to spend $1 million, but you want everybody to look professional. So you don't want them to look too cheap. You want them to, and so anybody that was working, I would give them, I think it was 3 shirts and a hat, and then if they were working more than 5 days or 4 or 5 days, I give them an additional. And then if they lost them or whatever, then I had them buy it at cost. So, what are you doing with uniforms? Are you gonna be t-shirt? If you're gonna have a chef jacket, are you gonna provide chef jackets? If you do, are you providing laundry service? These are questions you have to ask. You can get them through the laundry services, or are the chefs expected to wash their own uniform and come in? How are your servers going to be dressed? Is there a difference? A lot of fast casual places, you're gonna have the same uniform for the front and back house. If you're talking fine dining, you may have somebody almost in a full suit running around with, black pants, tie, etc. So these are things that you have to decide. I cannot, until I know what your concept and what you want to do. These are all, you need to price them out and negotiate them. The last one is the next one, I should say, it's never the last one. You'd think the equipment. Your equipment, you can get some really good deals on used equipment, that sort of thing. There's auction sites, as Kim was saying, she's been looking at places that are going out of business. It's unfortunate they do. There's equipment you can buy from them. You can get just about anything. Research it, make sure it's reputable, go look at it. They usually have, before you go in the auction, you can look at the piece of equipment. And if you're going to buy a lot of it, I would suggest maybe even bringing your repair guy, have a repair guy that can look at it and say, oh yeah, this is good, this will last years, or, ooh, I'm gonna have to put some new parts in there. This is about the most you want to go on it. So if you're buying more than like 4 or 5 items, it might be worthwhile paying the repair guy a couple $100 to come with you to make the decision whether you're going to invest in it or not. Again, I was able to get a slicer that normally was about $4,000 for about 250. A lot of our equipment was new because we were front facing, we had an open kitchen. Anything I could put in the back, I prefer to get used. Stoves generally are unbreakable. They're breakable, but they're very simple. Refrigeration, you're hit or miss there. The more electronics in it, or more electronics in the piece of equipment, the more risk you're taking. Also, you say the lower cost that they go for it, because you are taking risk, particularly like combi ovens and that sort of thing. You can also buy new. The other thing that you have to consider is any piece of equipment you put in, you have to have the proper specifications for it. So what's a gas draw? What's its electric draw? What's the drainage requirements? Does it need water? And does your space have that option? Can you put that in? One of the things that a smoker, most locations in Maryland, if you put a smoker in, it has to have a dedicated hood system to just that one piece of equipment. Well, that change, it makes it a little more difficult, but it's something you need to consider. Hoods, the nightmare of the restaurant. Rule of thumb, it used to be about $10,000 for every foot of hood. when you had to install it and run all the piping and all the hoods up to the ceiling or up to the attic, not attic, but the roof in a commercial office building was so they're not cheap. Excuse me. Common types of restaurants. Everybody knows a restaurant. Excuse me. First rule, location, location, location. In your restaurant, the advantage is there's huge upsides. You can multi-unit, charge more, you can expand, you can run catering out of it. There's many things that you can get advantages. You have fast casual, bakery, coffee shop, desserts, fine dining. The sky's the limit. Most of the time when people think, oh, I'm going to open a food business, first thing that comes to mind is restaurants. You may be doing a franchise, you may doing standalone, your own concept. All of these are, reasonable, and it's a great industry. The issue is make sure you research your location. Does it fit? The one I always use with students is, I'm going to open a restaurant. I'm going to do a vegan restaurant, and I'm opening it right in the middle of if anybody's seen Yellowstone, the ranch. You're not going to make money opening a vegan restaurant in the middle of Montana cattle country when you refuse to sell beef, because that's how they make their money. You're not going to have, if you're going to do a catering event, you don't want to do vegan for the Cattle Ranchers Association of America. They're just not interested. On the flip side, you don't want to butcher your own steak in the middle of Berkeley, California. That's not going to go over very well either, that you're cutting pieces of meat in front of the front window. You're going to be, so who and where is your location? What is your customer base? Customer discovery. One of the things I did before I opened my location was I sat out in front of it for about a week and a half, and I counted how many people went into a similar location. It wasn't the exact type. But it was a similar concept. It was a lunch-based place. And I counted every single person that walked in between 11 and 2, because I calculated that I needed to sell 165 pizzas per day to break even. And I was counting about 250 people that were going into the Potbellies. And my assumption was, if the Potbellies is able to get 250 people, I think I got a better product. I should be able to compete. So market research, customer research, take your product out, give it to people. Everybody loves the food until you start, charging for it. One of the advantages of a restaurant, you have seating, you have interior decor. One of the key things that you're going to have to figure out is landlord relations. As I mentioned, CAM, all these other aspects of it. What's your personal guarantee? How long is your lease? Is there a perfect example is, an airport. Why does a soda cost so much in an airport? Well, when we looked into it, an airport takes 20% of the gross sales before you even paid for anything. Plus, then plus they're charging you a very high square footage. So not only are you paying rent, they're also taking 20% off the top. So of course you got to sell that bottle of water for like $4 or $5. There's no way you can make money. On top of that, you're running into your staffing. Your staff also have to go through a TSA clearance, be able to go past the security line. So everybody in your staff has to have a higher level of security, and then it takes them longer to get into work. So guess what? They're going to demand more money. And it's just the bottom line. So catering, this is another one that's very classic. It can be very small. Kim, you're doing a lot of small catering. Where do you find your staff?
I honestly use people that I've worked with. Me being, such a small, just getting started, I need people I trust. I know their work. So throughout the years, I've kept in touch with just a few, and I call them when needed, and they jump right in. So other chefs, other food workers, hospitality department, just people that I've worked with.
And I know that we've talked, it also your family.
Oh, definitely my family.
Don't
They're
just
first.
don't discount the family. Because they're also your biggest supporters.
Yes,
So,
yes.
having that support system, we had an event that was put on by another student the other day, and half the workforce was their family.
Yeah,
And
sure was.
that being said, and the other thing is your family wants to see you succeed. And so they work harder than necessarily somebody you're paying. So when they talk about investment, they always say fools, friends, and family. I mean, that's your same thing with your first workers. I remember first time I was catering back in the 90s when I was still in high school. I used to hire my friends. I get my friends and everything, and next thing you know, of course, I got to admit, I'd come home with a bunch of dirty dishes. My mom would roll her eyes, and I'll get it all done. So yeah, your family, your friends, these are going to be the first people that help support you in the building of your operation. As you get larger, you're going to have the other thing is so we talked about that partnership. One of the things in almost every food business is, according to regulation, you have to have a certified kitchen. That being said, is so you can get shared kitchens, you can look at churches, look at other locations that are doing this, maybe you can rent them out. I've even made suggestions where there was a person that wanted to do a specific type of cookie. And I said, go find a bakery that, they're closed, the bakery closes, let's say at 8 o'clock at night, and there's nobody in there until 4 in the morning when the bakery opens. And the person well enough to say, hey, can I rent that bakery from this period to this period? Because I want to make these specific type of cookie that I want to sell at this location in the mall. It's not competing with yours. We're friends. Can I rent a portion of your kitchen? It displaces some of their costs from their rent and that sort of thing. And at the same, even their utilities. So you're paying kind of a little more, but you're still better off than trying to sign a lease. And it gives you an opportunity to try it out. Kim?
I just wanted to make sure exactly what you're saying is what I do. So I don't want people to hear you say that and think, what? I'm just supposed to walk up to someone? Yes. I'm from Catonsville. And so there's someone that I grew up. He has a couple businesses in the area, one being in a diner. So I just went and talked to him and I said, listen, he closes at about 8 o'clock at night, doesn't stay open late. They're breakfast and lunch. I use his facility that's already licensed for everything I need. So that's less on me that I have to get as far as permits and licensing. I'm ServSafe certified, and I pay him to work in his licensed establishment to use for catering and things like that, what I need as far as a certified kitchen. So it really is doable to just, you're working, you're helping each other. It's a, you're working, it's offsetting his costs of what he may have to pay, and it's offsetting my costs and also the hoops you have to jump through as far as licensing and permitting. So I just want to make sure it is real.
And the risk too is that if you were to cater out of your house, which a lot of people do, there is a risk, because if somebody does get sick, even if you have an LLC, guess what? They can pierce a corporate veil because you don't have a certified kitchen. I heard one time they only had certified 2 kitchens inside homes. There was like 2 of them in Montgomery County at one point historically. So getting your home kitchen certified is very difficult. If you have a pet, they're not going to certify it. So these are things that you have to take into consideration. So having that certified kitchen, if you're, as I mentioned, a firehouse, a church, maybe you can go to the firehouse and make a deal and say, hey, I'll cook for you 3 days a week. You guys let me use your kitchen on these off times. And then that's a deal. Although they're county owned, I don't know, they'll let you do that, but I'm not getting involved in it. You go figure out what you got to do to make it work. But according to regulation, you have to have a certified kitchen that has been inspected it's regularly inspected by the health department. It goes through a bunch of other stuff. So you have to have professional equipment. All of it's got to be NSF. There's a lot of aspects of it that you have to take into consideration. As you get further and larger, staffing is a huge issue for caterers. The reason is it's not regular work. A restaurant, I have the advantage. I can say, I'm going to set you a week schedule that you can come in. You can count on that schedule. You're going to come in every day on that particular day. We make the agreement. Catering, it may be like, I'm going to be super busy, but guess what? As soon as January 1st hits, we're going to be slow for the next 2 months. I don't have any business going on, or I have minimal business and I have to minimize who I have going on. So your catering can, a lot of times they'll do temp agencies. They'll have a Rolodex of people that can work. So that's a thing. one of the biggest things I always say that for any catering, whether it's from wedding cakes to plated hors d'oeuvres, transportation can be tricky. I don't know if you ever transport a wedding cake, you're like very careful. You just wait. Like I got like 10 times the normal distance between the cars because the last thing I want to do is slam on the thing and that whole cake goes over. So transportation is an issue for this. Food trucks, very popular. Mobile, so location, location, location. There are rules. I know, Kim, you're working on a food truck. What are some of the stuff that you're finding?
I just find that so every county has like their own system. Baltimore County in particular is a little more complicated. They literally have their own team of people dedicated to food trucks. Just know you can get certified maybe in a simpler county and just ask for reciprocity, which allows you to travel 90 miles from your location, your original location of licensing. Being a mobile unit, they'll give you that so that you can move around the state. But yeah, it's not too complicated once you understand what you need to do. It's just getting that initial list of what you need to do. So the first thing, just call your local health department. They will run down, this is what you need. You're going to need to submit a service plan. Just that lets them know what your intentions are. And then because there's levels to it, there's different avenues. They want to put you in the right lane as far as what your service is with your mobile unit. And then you just go from there. Again, get that service plan in, set up the inspection date, let them come out so that they can tell you what you need to do so that you can be certified. Do not try and run and just do what you think. It just comes out to be a, waste of money and time. Let them come and inspect and tell you what you need.
No, that's great advice. I mean, it's you probably are not going to pass the first time they show up, but it's cheaper than like guessing, oh, well, I'm going to put this in, I'm going to put that in. And the next thing you know, they tell you, you can't have that one.
Yes.
No. Now, I do say no, it is limited in size, the amount of people you can put through. There's only so much food you can put on the truck.
Yeah.
The reality is there is limited upside. You can have multiple trucks, but you're going to have either way, you need the certified kitchen. You have to have a home kitchen and you also need to consider storage. That the refrigeration on the truck does not run when the truck or the generator are not running. So there are areas where you can have an outdoor plug that can be plugged into it, but you're talking about 220, and there's not a whole lot of like parking stalls for that sort of thing. So you need to store all your cold food items, your mayonnaises, your chickens, whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter what food, you need to have something where you can store it. Parking, DC has some unique aspects to it where I don't know how much it's changed. You had to be invited if you didn't have a legacy, and the legacy were all the guys with the hot dog carts that were like 100 years old. And so you had to be invited, but you could be invited through Instagram. So they'd have a friend that said, oh, will you be here? And then it would claim that's an invite. Understand the regulatory. Also, I know that sometimes in DC that I've heard, I haven't verified this, that they will literally have a old junker car they park, pull that out, they park the food truck, they do the business at their really high-end location, then they park the junker back then there and let it get, and so they can guarantee that they save the spot that they found has been valuable to them. This isn't something that, particularly as a professor at a county school, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, but look into how people make it operate. You're gonna have to figure out the most effective way. There's a lot of things too. So with food trucks, you're gonna see probably more on lunch, depending on what type of food truck. But then you have to figure out, how am I gonna make money at dinner? Because when that window isn't opening, you're not making money. Pools, local pools. I know our local pool, I think it's every Wednesday, would have a food truck down there, so you could have a picnic during the summer. It's a nice thing. So different areas, different clubs. I believe up in Annapolis, I've seen where one of the firehouses would invite food trucks and to raise some money, the portion went to it. So there's a lot of places where you can get in, and lots of people, so it becomes a destination. People get used to your food. The other thing is it's also an area for you to test out what you're going to do food wise. So, there's the alcohol thing. I have seen once a alcohol trailer, but it had to be on personal property. So it had to be on private venues. They got the private license for alcohol service, and they had to serve food. It was they were down at a cousin's wedding, and they had a little, like, it was cute, little, like, almost like camper. They had two different cocktails, but they had to serve food. So they had little cups full of charcuterie, and they gave those out for free. And it was an open bar for the wedding. So it was a way. So there, I know I put no alcohol, but that's something you're going to have to research very specifically and find out all the laws. But for the most part, there's not many food trucks that have alcohol. Private chef. The advantage is oftentimes you're doing meal prep for families. You're going into the person's home. You're cooking on their stove. You're shopping for the ingredients. You're bringing everything in. It's limited size. Much as I said with the food truck, one of the issues is I've heard the maximum you can make profit wise from a food truck is probably between 50 and 75,000 a year. If you're running everything after you pay for everything. A restaurant, there's restaurants that are making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, so there's a larger upside. Big restaurants or very expensive restaurants. Meal prep for families. You're doing catering in-house. You don't have the kitchen. You're testing out, do I have the skills? Am I good enough to do this? It's something to consider. Another one, cottage. University of Maryland, I believe, has some aspects to it. There's very strict rules and regulations. You can't have proteins. So you can't bring in chicken. You can't have any eggs, if I remember correctly. So it tends to be very small baked goods and that sort of thing. You're looking at Etsy farmers markets. If you do a flavored popcorn, you can probably get away with that. But that's something you need to look into. Those laws, and there are cottage industry information that you can find. Okay, and then the next one is meal kits, meal delivery. Again, certified kitchen. Kim, are you doing any of this?
I do meal prep, pay by Friday, delivery on Sunday. So I do that weekly. I put out a menu, you order by number. And yeah, that's pretty simple. That's my weekly, that's in rotation weekly. So.
And as you can see, Kim is working different. She has multiple ones of these going on. She's looking at the food truck. She has the meal kit, and then she's doing the catering. So sometimes it's a hustle until you figure out what your niche is. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, for me, the ultimate goal is the food trailer. I have a food trailer, it's the fixer-upper, but in the meantime, I'm doing groundwork, trying to, make a brand, get customers, repeat customers, and just get my style of food out there so that maybe when I get that trailer on the road, I'll have a little bit of a following so we don't have such a slow opening. But that's the goal.
No, it's a very smart way to go.
Yeah.
Again, as you grow, you're going to have to scale with a web-friendly interface. The larger you get, it depends on how many units, labeling requirements, delivery logistics, getting all that delivery out can be difficult. The storing until you get the delivery out. Your HACCP, meaning your hazard analysis control point. This is something you'll learn in ServSafe. Getting the food cooked and cooled in the proper times and in the proper reheating. So these are all things you have to take into consideration. They'll teach you in the HACCP. You need to take care of that. Now, the one that always comes up that we actually had actually very active member here in Howard County. She's also in National Restaurant Association. She's a runner. But we have Trisha Hudson's one of our advisory, and she spoke. And one of the things that she talked about was her friends that come in and say, you know what? I love entertaining. I should open a restaurant. It's a different world. And she'll tell you, and if you ever meet her, she's a wonderful person. She said, my question is, okay, how long does it take you to make 25 cupcakes? Because the reality is you go, okay, well, it takes me an hour. I have some very good friends, our neighbor. She's a great home baker. She does some beautiful stuff. It's delicious. She made her own ice cream cake. but it was also like, how many can you produce? Oh, I spent about 3 hours decorating this cake. Okay, so you can sell that cake for, it's a nice cake, 45, 50 bucks, 60 bucks. But then we got to back out all the ingredients. So now you made maybe 40 bucks. And now divide that by 4, you're making $10 an hour. Oh, wait, we got to rent the kitchen. We got to rent this. All of a sudden, those costs come in so important. If I can't get you to produce a minimum of 100 cupcakes an hour, I can't hire you to operate my operation. I need that speed. So the other thing is, foodie loves to cook. I love just hanging out, sipping wine. That ain't happening in the restaurant. You need to put out, Friday night, you're gonna have, 75, 80 covers, easy, if not 120, depending on how many seats. You're gonna try to turn that at least 2.5 times. So my old chef used to say, every time you double the number, it didn't become twice as hard, it became exponentially hard to cook that level. So if I told you you need to put out 75 plates, they're all the exact perfectly plated and hot, and you have 15 minutes, can you do it? That's what it comes down. So professional equipment, you have to have food safety rules, pressure. It is a high pressure industry. Managing teams, HR. The higher you go as a chef, the less cooking you actually do. The executive chef at best is doing 10% of his cooking. You're talking a big hotel, almost all he's doing is managing the people. There's a great set of documentaries you can find on YouTube called Mega Food Documentaries done by the Nat Geo. Go look at the one for the big hotel, look at the catering, and look at the cruise ship. It gives you an idea of what a day in life and how food moves through operations. Again, invoicing, bill paying, placing orders. Okay, so today I sold 7 steaks. Tomorrow I have 8. My delivery comes on Sunday. I can't run out of filet mignon. That's what we're known for. But I can't have the filet mignon go bad. How many do I need to order? You don't want to have, well, it becomes something that becomes intuitive, but also it's, it's a math equation. You'll get there, but you need that experience. Cost controls. Speaking of that tenderloin, you buy them as already cut steaks, 8 ounces, every one of them. You're going to pay like 30 some dollars a pound. This is the bottom line. I can buy a Pismo, which is a tenderloin with a chain on, for about, depends on the quality. Let's say we're doing average quality, about $12 to $15 a pound. You're like, well, I'm just going to do that. Well, the reason they do that is because when I cut that down, by the time I cut the steak, the reality is after I pull out the fat, the chain, and really trim it down to just a filet mignon, I'm gonna have a lot of extra meat that I can do other things with. And I'm gonna have a lot of fat and gristle that I gotta get rid of. But I really have the steaks that their actual cost is about $25 for the filet mignons. So yeah, I'm saving $5 because I have that knowledge per pound. And I have this other meat that I can do things with. But I'm losing. It's not, if I think, well, I only pay $15 a pound and I charge it $15 a pound when the real cost is 25. Then you go, well, explain that in a way I understand. You're making apple pie. Do you put the core in? Do you put the peel in? Do you put the stem in? You use 100% of those apples. And if you're paying $1.29 a pound for the apples, and you're going to make 10,000 apple pies, and you calculate you need 3 pounds of apples, you go, okay, well, I'm paying $1.29 times, and then all of a sudden the reality is you're only getting 80% of the yield after you peel and slice and all that. Then the question is have you really made any money when you actually calculate it properly? So these are some of the cost controls you have to control. Your food cost, so that I mentioned earlier, you can either have what's called percentage. So you say, I want to run a 28% food cost. I generally say you want to run between 25 and 33 as a general average in the restaurant industry. Any lower, you're really kind of cheating your customer unless you're really manipulating that food. So it's not to say these are guaranteed, but if I'm bringing in a lot of food and I'm charging only 22% food costs, I really am shortchanging the customer unless there's a huge amount of labor that had to go into that recipe. The other thing, it can be marginal. So, excuse me, if I was to, the wine I talked about, so if I sell $1,000 bottle of wine, I'm buying it at 500. it may be difficult for me to sell it at, I may move more units at 1,000 than 1,500, which would be 3 times. So yeah, I'm doing 50%. But if I can sell more in a year and I can turn over my inventory, it makes more sense for me to do that because I'm still making $500 off of that bottle of wine. That's what they call contribution margin. Recipe costing. The reality is you have to know what your recipe costs. Bringing it down, like every ingredient. And these are actually huge. You can ask Kim, how much do I harp on this in class?
It's just something I learned to be so vital. I mean, literally knowing with my meal prep, I know one meal prep may cost $2 to make, one may cost $2.25. That is the best way to do, down to every ingredient, every amount of that ingredient. It just makes my life easier. I know I'm not working for free. So it's so important.
And that's the other thing you'll see too, is like the standardized recipe. If you ever want to have a day off, if you don't have that standardized recipe, I make it, then Kim makes it and she does it her way. Well, from cost control, if she
Yes.
puts more chicken or I put more chicken, the cost is not there. And then
And also just have you ever went somewhere and got something in return because it was so good and it didn't live up to its expectation? That's because maybe they didn't have a standardized recipe. Maybe there's a different cook that day. That doesn't happen at Chick-fil-A. That doesn't happen because it's one recipe. So it's very important. Very important.
and you know, if you serve a 10-ounce steak one time and you serve a 20-ounce steak, the guy comes back and is like, or at the same table, they look different. People are gonna be like, what? Customers are like looking at it like I'm getting ripped off. They're looking at the other table like, why is his bigger? So you know, standardized size, standardized recipe. Your variable, which is your fixed cost. You know, your fixed cost to a degree, they're fixed. You can't change them, except for rent that you can negotiate once every years. So you want to make sure when you look at those fixed costs, can you live with them? And then of
That's
course
right.
you got to plan for your profit margin. Again, as Kim's mentioning, when it comes down to 225 versus 250, we'll go to the last slide. Everybody got, I put this up and all of a sudden all my students go, I don't know if I want to open a restaurant. Kim's laughing. She saw this many years ago, or not many, but several years ago. So the first one is, as you go, imagine a funnel or a bunch of water being poured, or not water, but money is just going into this pot. And okay, so we reached the first level. Well, guess what? Taxes are coming out. The government's going to get theirs. We know it. Next one is payroll. Now I put payroll here and there's a red line. And the reason I put that red line is the point from which the government will sue you. So if you rob your employees, the government will be the one that sues you from the labor department to get their back wages. Anything above this, technically it's the other people will sue you for their money. It's not the government coming after you. So not that you're safe if you don't pay them. It's just that who has more resources? You know, even Cisco, the biggest supplier in the country, has less resources than the federal government. And you don't want the federal government coming after you. So cost of goods, so your product that's coming in. And oftentimes you put the personal guarantee. Also that red line, unless you sign a personal guarantee, they can only take the assets of the business. Below that red line, even if you have a LLC, they can take your house and sell it to pay off these items. So without the personal guarantee, that red line can move up and down a bit. Cost of goods, the food, the supplies, everything you're bringing in. What is it going to cost? You know, I'm going to serve lobster rolls. Well, can you sell enough? Are they, you know, I love a good lobster roll. Don't get me wrong, but lobsters are expensive. Your rent, how much does your rent cost? Oh, that's pouring out. Utilities, insurance. On your utilities, do you have a POS system? Do you have to buy that? Do you have to pay a monthly fee? One of the things that we, even here at the school, we're paying a monthly fee, a quarterly fee for web service, and then our ability to operate our POS, and point of sale. But to give you an idea, the importance of a POS, a friend of mine, his POS went down in one night for the same number of customers. He had 8% less revenue. And it wasn't, I won't even say it was all theft, or even if it was any theft, where a server says everything was chaotic. And so the server's like, I need to make good. I'm just going to give an extra glass of wine because it's taking longer. So those POS is for a restaurant become very important. In your ability to track is vital for a POS. Finally, you've got the utilities, electric, gas, water. They're not free. I know that my electric bill at home is going up. I'm glad I don't have a restaurant right now. Your service on the debt. You probably have borrowed money at some point to buy some piece of equipment or to get stuff moving. You have a line of credit. You have to pay service on the debt. After you've paid all that, we get the ladle of hope and we skim off what profit we can off the top of that stock pot of doom. It's not to dissuade anybody, but the reality is you have to know where you're going into and realize all the costs that are going to happen, and that this is something that you're going to face as a restaurant or any food operator. Kim, I mean, I'm sure you're.
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, this is why me renting that kitchen out in my local neighborhood,
You reduce this.
I don't have to pay any of that. I pay a flat fee
Right.
and we're good.
So you figured out a way, but what you've sacrificed in that is that you don't have the pick of time.
Right.
You have to work around it. So nothing. He's reducing his rent. He's reducing. He probably tacking on a little more for utilities. He's probably getting you to pay a percentage of the insurance. So
Yes.
he's sort of adjusting these three to make it more effective for him. You're getting a better deal because you don't have to pay full freight. You're getting a percentage.
Yes.
Incredibly smart way to do it. I mean, is there anything else you want to share, like stuff that you like, tricks of the trade that you're finding, like, and testing? What are you seeing with your customers as they buy your food? How are they reacting?
Um, so I try, my product, try and be as clean as possible. Of course that costs more money, but when I talk to every client because I need to know their preferences, any allergies, etc. I talk to them about that as to why something may be a little bit more than they used to, but I try and cook as clean from scratch, as possible. So it's just about conversation, letting your client know what you do and where you're coming from. But as far as sourcing, just be as savvy as possible. Everything, inflation is real right now, but it can be done. You just have to put a little more work into it, but it can be done.
So I'm just saying a couple questions. A food cart. Um, I would guess it would be dependent on what type of food cart you're selling. So if you were to buy you're buying all prepackaged food, that'd be more like vending machines. There's specific regulations on that.
Yes, it is actually considered a low priority. If you are using prepackaged, it's much easier than your moderate or your high level priority. So definitely look into it. That it's a little easier task if you are doing that type of food there, prepackaged food.
So is there any other questions that I'm missing?
Here's a question. Where did your passion for food come from? We don't have another hour, but you have a minute.
Okay, any question I need to cover? Because it just kicked me off and brought me back. So I didn't hear what you.
Oh, sorry. The question I have, so there were some questions. People were asking, you keep mentioning a class. Where's this class? So I provided a link to the culinary program
Okay, excellent.
at community college. So if anybody is interested in checking that out, I also provided a link to the University of Maryland Extension is offering a course to cottage food production.
Awesome, perfect.
So I put a link for that as well if anybody's interested. And then the last question, that's not a quick question, where did your passion for food come from? So Kim and Eric, if you could have 1 minute each.
You want me to go? Mine came from childhood. I may be adrenaline junkie. There's something about I think the best line I ever heard on it was and I'll make it quick, is Patrick O'Connell from the Inn at Low Washington, and he said that for some reason, it's an overwhelming consuming passion. It consumes your entire life. It overwhelms everything about you, and for some reason, we still love it. And I will attribute that to him when I heard him when I was in culinary school, and he was absolutely correct. Kim?
For me, again, a childhood. So I come from a large family on my father's side. Every Sunday we go to grandma's house, all the way up until COVID, that was still going on, and we ate. And so what you saw is that food brings people together. And that's something that just, it's in my heart. It's something that is sentimental to me. And so I love people and I love food. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, any other
you.
questions we can answer that are?
Hold on, let me just provide the link to the class again. And let's see, I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much, Kim and Eric. This has been such a fantastic session. I like how Eric was presenting and Kim was commenting based on your current experience. This is something that you're doing right now, which I'm sure is not easy. So thank you so much for sharing with us, and maybe we can bring you back in a year or so you can give us an update.
Thank you for having me.
And she's in the trenches, so she's seeing what's happening day to day. So, but good luck to everybody who wants to start a food business. It's rewarding, it's fun, it's stressful. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss a lot of money goodbye. Hopefully you make some.
That's right.
All right, well, thank you so much. If anybody has any other questions, actually we have a raised hand. Do you have a minute?
Sure.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Terry.
Hi, good afternoon. I posted a question in the chat by mistake. And my question is, do either of you have any proprietary recipes proprietary and or any preparation methods that are proprietary by any chance? And how did you protect them?
So the copyright will not cover recipes. Copyright law is passed, so recipes you cannot copyright. The only way you can protect them is through trade secret. The example of that, probably in the biggest history, is Coca-Cola. There's only like 3 people in the entire company that know the recipe. And in fact, most of the people only know parts of it. There was evidently somebody that, and you have to protect it at all times, show that you protect it. My view is I can give you my recipe, and just because I've done what I do for so long, I can still outcook you. So trying to hide one particular recipe, I'm pretty open with mine, but I'm also not in the industry. I don't necessarily just hand them out. But it's very difficult. I know of some places that they wanted their employees to sign non-disclosure agreements. There's some things that are going on in the Department of Labor that are challenging those, particularly in software, and it would probably have an effect on that as well. The reality is your ability to protect your recipes, it's to a degree within the realm of the high-end chefs, the chefs that I work for, like it was bad form to copy, and everybody knew that you were copying, and your goal was to showcase that you were your creativity. So people wouldn't necessarily, but I have seen people that have brought recipes from chefs that they respected as an homage, as an honoring, and have served it in cities that chef is not in. So there's no perfect way to protect your recipes. And the techniques, there's only so many ways to cook food. I mean, it's thousands of years. You can get it down for, molecular gastronomy can be very complex, and you're the only one that's figured out this exact gram weight, but just keep your recipe book locked up if that's something you're really worried about, particularly if you're testing. And yeah, it's tough.
Thank you.
Sure. Ala, is there anything else, or are we good?
Thank you. So I think do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
And it could be both for you and Kim as well.
Okay.
So how
Kim,
can
go
we
first.
how can we go by finding a space starting out? I've seen some methods such as ghost kitchens and working with food halls. What are some of the other suggestions?
I would say so. I thought, because you go to a gas station, you'll see a food truck. So I thought you could just, pull up and talk to the owner. You still have to go to the state. So go look, go scope the space out, see, you know, the foot traffic, and then go to the state to see if it's okay for you to work there or park there. I do also have a friend, once I get the trailer, he has land. He has offered me to set up on his land. I still would have to take that to the state, the address, and they have to come out and make sure that, you know, it's appropriate for what I want to do. So ultimately, you can go wherever you want to go as long as the state approves it. So talking to people and just finding a good place, good foot traffic, do your homework, but take it to the state.
And for looking for kitchens, again, as I mentioned, churches, rec centers. I mean, there's also, you can go online and find sites that can match you up for rental kitchens. Talk to owners. This is probably one of the most challenging aspects of trying to start that small catering, is finding a certified kitchen that you're able to work in. There is no magic button to it.
I will like to add, they have, it's, I guess because it's booming, there are places out here. Look up community kitchens. I'm trying to think, commercial kitchens. There are kitchens in the area that have 10 to 12 setups of table. It's simple tables, maybe, you know, a couple prep tables. You get a space in the freezer, you get a space in the walk-in, and you pay a monthly fee. You can run your business out of there. They normally have a catering license attached that you have to get. You may pay an annual fee to be there, but just look up commercial kitchens, community kitchens. They do have them, and they're popping up more and more because it's so popular.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you both. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Eric. And I will share the slides, and I will also share the link to the video once it's uploaded to our YouTube channel. So I can provide to those of you who are interested a way to get in touch with Eric and Kim. They're both teaching at Howard Community College. So if you're interested in those kind of courses, Eric, can you quickly talk? Somebody was asking about that. Do people have to do a AAS degree, or can they sign up for a certificate?
We have both a certificate and the degree. Our certificate is designed, we have a pastry and a culinary arts. On the side note, we also have the AAS in both of those. It may be something that you want to learn. There's specific courses that we have, the food safety, that we actually teach as a requirement. But we also have a course on cost controls that may be, if I want to learn how the cost control aspect works. So we do have specific classes that you can take that don't have prerequisites. As for the food and the certificate, we do have a progression for a professional certificate. And I think we have one of the best programs around by far.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who attended and stayed even overtime. All right, have a great day, and I'll follow up with videos and everything else. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.